right, thank you for staying with Kenya's Choice 2022. We'd like to hear your views on every conversation we're going to have here. It's a general state of the nation, especially on what lies ahead. We'll not dwell so much on the past, but what lies ahead is most important as the president-elect gears up to take as oath of office on the 13th of September. With me, here's Danvas Makori, NCIC Commissioner. Thank you so much for making time. Diana Gishengo is here, advocate of the High Court and also campaigns manager, Amnesty International, Kenya. Thank you so much for making time. And we also have Kawive Wambua, who's the Deputy CEO in Inuka Trust. Asante sana for making time.
Thank you.
So, Makori, I'll start with you. So, here we are now. Campaigns are done. The petition is done. What are the lessons learned from your view? What are the lessons learned this far?
Thanks, Trevor, for having me. I think, first of all, that lessons learned are many. But key among them is that, you know what, our institutions do work. They work. The framers of the constitutions were wise in why they put certain institutions in certain places, and they have worked. And they've been tested, they've been pushed. And it's good to test them once in a while to know that actually they can work. And I think they've worked. I think secondly also, lesson learned is, I think, the maturity of Kenyans themselves. I think I'm amazed because we're practically everywhere in the country talking to people, knowing what's going on the ground. And days to election, after election, through the process of waiting for the court, up to now, you could actually see the maturity of Kenyans. I mean, they took it in stride. I mean, of course, they were anxious, wanting their person to win, but they had resolved to move on, and I think it's really good. And if you look at the mood of the country right now, you don't think we're at an election. I mean, you actually cannot even think of an election. I think that's one of the key lessons learned. And it's a positive thing and needs to be commended and actually reinforces the country. Because to me, if you can do that, then we lay a very strong foundation for the growth of our country. I think that's, to me, is very critical. I think the lesson learned is the issue of, when it comes to leadership. The reason everybody was vying from the MCAs to, of course, the president, now the president-elect, was because we wanted to chart a new course for our country. And guess what? Now we have an opportunity. So for me, I look at the opportunity that we have, and I'm glad what you've said. Now let's look forward to what we have. I think, I mean, there's myriad lessons learned, but there's also the main takeaways that for our country. And if you look at the international community, I was talking to the Swiss ambassador actually in Bombers, behind the scenes, one time, the VIP room. And this is what he told me. He says, what Kenya has done is not an example just to Africa. Is an example to Europe. Now, he's a Swiss ambassador saying they can learn a lot. I mean, they've seen how we execute our democracy. And so it's a lesson for other, and not just, you know, sometimes we only think of Africa. I think globally speaking, we've set a very high standard in terms of democracy. Actually, the American ambassador was in a meeting just the other day, and she said, you know, actually, it's a lesson for America too, given what happened in January 6th. I mean, we, the Bastard Democracy, we are showing them a good lesson on how to go about democracy. Where there's a dispute, this is the way to go. You don't have to storm your way through your capital to force away. I mean, it almost worked with Bombers, but nevertheless, like I say, institution land.
Yeah. And Diana? What lessons have Kenyans learned, the political class and the ordinary citizens as well? Do you agree that institutions work, like Makori say?
I want to say the Constitution works and will continue working. That's definitely a lesson learned. Our institutions wobble, but definitely they remember their mandate, and the anchorage in the Constitution has seen them grow. To be honest, we have seen most of our independent institutions grow in that sense. And curiously, we've been running surveys around key institutions, NCIC, IEBC, National Police Service, the judiciary. In the week leading to the Supreme Court decision, Kenyans rated the conduct of the National Police Service at 80%. 80%, like they are really trying to maintain law and order in a dignified way, which is very impressive. We hope that whatever they did during that period can be carried forward. Another key lesson is, as the president-elect is sworn into office, the political class, legislators move to Parliament and Senate. Let us remember the 40% registered voters who did not vote, who decided, I don't know whether we'll call it abstention, who decided this doesn't matter, doesn't count, that voice is too big to be ignored. That is the one lesson that we have learned moving forward from our education curriculum, from our youth, the youth in particular. We must engage them and find out why they spoke so loudly and kept off the election. And finally, the other lesson is we are so far from building a nation. We are so far from calling ourselves one Kenya. The declaration of results, the ruling by the Supreme Court still shows a sharply divided country of ethnic nations. The call and the lesson to us as civic leaders, political leaders, is that moving forward, we must aspire increasingly to build a Kenyan nation where everybody, notwithstanding their ethnicity, where they come from, their age, feels they are a part of whichever government that is elected. And it is a call especially to Parliament as they go in and make their decision to help Kenya keep shining. We have managed to do very well in how we displayed our results, how we carried ourselves. Can we now fly the flag that finally there is one Kenya politically?
Okay. Kawive, what are the takeaway lessons for you when we were here with you all through from the campaign to the declaration to all of it?
Yeah, it's been a tough year for Kenyans. I think the greatest thing for us as a nation, or the biggest lesson that I think we learn, is that this is our country. Now, whatever you say, whatever you do, we have Kenya as the common bond. This is where we belong. This is who we are. The number two is that across the elections divide from MCAs up to the president, I think it's very clear that Kenyans get the kind of leaders that they deserve. Because if you look at the 40% who did not vote, they contributed to who won and who did not win. If you look at the huge youth population that did not participate in the elections because they're saying, so what? So what if we participate? They contributed to what it is that we have. The fact of the two sides, almost equal numbers supporting Raila and supporting Ruto in the elections, also goes to show that as a nation we have polarities, and these polarities are things that we can work on. Because now, whether you supported Raila or Ruto, you did that as a Kenyan, and today Ruto is the president-elect, and we've got one to get used to that fact. Number one. Number two, we've got to put in place mechanisms to hold his government to account. And number three, that we've got to ensure that we don't go on a political journey all through. You know, we have this tendency as Kenyans of doing politics 24/7 throughout the 5 years. So we need to have an opportunity to get to work and to get that government to work. And I think the other lesson is that the leaders who came in through the electoral process should put in place mechanisms to ensure that those, especially those who do not support them, feel services being delivered. Because it's our money after all. It is our money, it is, and these leaders are being paid to provide services, not to politics. I think that would be equal opportunities, equal services being delivered across the country is very important for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Makori, there's something Diana said which is right down your alley. She said that we are far from building a nation, and it's just an indication of a divided country of ethnic tribes. Mm-hmm. Are you getting that sense from the NCAC perspective?
I will disagree with that a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Because we've spent a lot of time on the ground. As we say in Kenya, ground things actually are quite different in a positive way. First and foremost, I think to answer your question, it's good to give credit where it's due. The current information that we had as the Mio Kenya Kwanza, did not go on the old traditional fault lines of ethnicity. Okay, although the idea of ethno-nationalization was still apparent here and there, but for the most part, if you look at, let's say, Kenya Kwanza, I mean, the leaders came from across the country. He was able to build a coalition of leaders from across the country, from Western to the coast, from Rift Valley to Central to Eastern. So the leadership kind of crossed. Same thing with Azimio. Vis-a-vis the other times where it was strictly regional blocks for the most part. So they kind of cross. And when the political class chose to go that way, it helped our country. Secondly, also, the policies they advocated for, especially in the rallies. I mean, it was 90% issue-based, I would say. They argue whether it's bottom-up or the other part what the guys had, or the socialism, you want to call it that way, the goodies they will give it, or take it issue-based, things that affect the economy, what they will do for you or won't do for you for that matter, the laws that will change, how they will affect institutions and so on and so forth. Now, that is what the political class did. But if you go on the ground, you know what is amazing, whether you're in Kisumu, whether you're in Eldoret, whether in Kericho, whether in Mombasa, the conversation, you would get supporters from both sides passionately supporting their people, especially in metro areas where traditionally would have challenges, and whether it's Nakuru, whether it's Eldoret, you saw that. Now, for me, to underscore what my point coming from, look at the Kenyans' reaction even after the declaration of the winner and the Supreme Court. You haven't seen any, I would say, discourse or narrative that suggests that we're still there. I'm not saying we're really far from it. So here's the point. But for the most part, I can say, Trevor, we've really moved forward as a country in terms of discourse, in terms of narrative. Because as guys on the ground, we hear what people say. I can tell you what people are saying in Kericho, what people were saying in Eldoret. Guess what? What somebody was saying in Kericho or Kisumu was actually the same, that we'll embrace whoever wins. That is our president, and move forward. Now, the person that would win was coming from an opposite ethnic group. And for the first time in our country, if you really want to talk ethnicity, the two leading candidates were not from I would say the main tribes, even as a Bantu nation or so on and so forth. And the Kenyans chose them, you understand, coming from a different, larger ethnic family. So they didn't see them as, well, this guy belongs to this larger family. They just saw as a candidate. I'm choosing this party. I'm choosing, they're exciting me. I'm choosing this person. He's exciting me. So I'm going to choose him. You understand? So I think we've moved forward as a country. So the reality that we must have now as a country going forward is in the policies that will be agreed upon, legislation that will come forward and implemented. Because what happened was, Trevor, in the past, what really amplified ethnicity was whoever was in charge was his tribesman, king's man. So he would give goodies to his people and his region only. Yeah. So I think, for me, we're moving forward from that. Yeah. And I trust that the new administration, given the lineup that they display, resources will be distributed across the board so that now we can genuinely move forward in terms of development as a country from where we've come from to where we need to go. And
we'll talk about that service delivery in just a bit, which was brought up by Kawive. But let me hear Kawive's view on what Diana raised before we get into yours.
I wanted to tell Commissioner, now that you are working, this your work, there's a joke that is doing the rounds in social media spaces. And people are saying, actually, they crafted a form 34D. It's a joke, a form 34D of IEBC, and they're saying they want to be removed from the voters' register. And some of the reasons they are giving is that whatever you do, however you vote, it will either be a Kikuyu or a Kalenjin who becomes the president. Mm-hmm. And that is, it's a joke, yes. It is something that's doing the rounds. But if you read behind the text, mm-hmm. you see that people are saying, it's a whole discussion about whatever of numbers. What was it called?
The tyranny
of numbers.
Yeah.
And people are saying that, do we feel Kenyan this way when already we can only function to enable a presidency from a certain community and not others. Why? Because we cannot marshal the numbers. And if you look at the many other ethnic communities, because ideally we need to accept that we have got ethnic identities as well as regional identities. So the fulfillment of the nationhood principle is one based on the fact that, you can come from whatever ethnicity and become a leader of not a president in this country. But clearly, it doesn't seem to be working.
But Kawive, is that a fair point, knowing that the president-elect, as it stands, got 25% in 24 counties, more than half of the counties? Because they did get votes across board.
You got actually 25% in 39 counties, according to IEBC.
So then that negates the argument you're bringing up right now.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't negate it, because acceptability across board is a function of options. How many options did we have? How many people are able to build the political muscle, to build the political, to have the political wherewithal?
You're arguing did he build political muscle because of the ethnic background comes from? I don't think so. I really don't think so, because it's not like his region lacked other people who have risen up. I think for the most part, if you listen to people on the ground, the young people who actually, as you said, quite like he didn't vote, they were excited about him as a candidate, not as some guy who comes from a certain ethnic group. They liked him, his rhetoric, his everything about him. So I don't think it was purely ethnic. It was just him as a hero. And I can tell you for a fact, and Nairobi points to where the country will go. And mark my words, you see, in Nairobi, even the makeup of Nairobi and how it came across, it will be exactly how the country will across. They'll choose, elect you as a person rather than as one belongs from actually a political bloc or even an ethnicity. Because that was the argument that, well, somebody will win because they belong to a specific ethnic group. I know that argument that came as far as Nairobi governorship is concerned. But the person who won was tribeless. Actually, the reason why he won was the fact that he endeared himself as a tribeless person. And that's the country going to go. For now, I would say the country has moved forward. My argument was the country has moved forward. But the president-elect was elected because of him, not because of ethnicity that actually he belongs to.
And Anna, you're the one who started this argument.
What I agree is the 2022 election shifted issues.
Yeah.
There was a stronger focus on, by one side, anti-corruption, governance, and cohesion building. The other side was also very, very, very focused on strengthening independent constitutions, rule of law, and the economy. There was also a very strong class narrative that shifted the issue. But having said that, and the fact that both the front runners in Azimio and Kenya Kwanza surpassed 35, okay? So the 24 counties, we've gone past that. Whether it is internal migration or whatever, that one we have passed. It was not the issue. It was just 50 plus one vote. Yeah. But if you go closer and analyze the vote, the ethnic dimension and regional dimension still comes out very, very strongly. Look at the areas that each candidate say managed to get above 70%. They are areas with a clear ethnic kingpin. Okay? For Azimio, the strongest areas would be Ukambani, Nyanza. There, the other candidate finds it very, very difficult to penetrate. Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley, largely the North Rift. Again, the president-elect has higher penetration. Why? Because we are yet to shift from from the centrality of the presidency, and why coming from a certain ethnic community, a region, tends to favor people from that region in terms of prioritization, access to services, and things like that. But I do agree with Makori. There is hope that based on their promises, and now they have more 25% across the country, and institutions are stronger. So all of us, through the Commission on Revenue Allocation, will be demanding we are equal Kenyans. But that journey needs to be accelerated, okay, so that we are able to appeal to anybody. And to even bring it closer home, let us look at our county assemblies. Very, very many county assemblies will not have an opposition. Why? Because we needed to support all the way. And this was the one time I was as optimistic as Makori. That look, everywhere, parties are everywhere. Former governors have established political parties in their counties. They did not compete as effectively because of how much we have invested in building ethnic nation. So deviating from the politics or the direction of the ethnic nation tends to face a lot of resistance, and that is an area we must strengthen. Say for counties like, say, maybe more Nairobi, Kajiado, Narok, most others will not have a strong opposition, and that is necessary for effective running of our county governments moving forward.
Okay. However, you brought up something that is also very interesting, service delivery. What must the president, the president-elect now, but from the 13th he'll be the president, what must he now do to ensure that this is a seamless or even a smooth flow of service delivery right from the top all the way downwards?
I don't know whether you mean smooth flow from where we are, or because from where we are, you've seen a breakdown of service delivery. Now, you know, if you look at where the economy is, yeah. If you look at the whole issue of taxation and the key sectors of our economy not working, I think he has a lot, he has too much on his plate. Number one is the fact that, you know, from the campaigns, he said that he wants to put money in Wanjiko's pockets. That is a strategy that he used to campaign. Therefore, he has to translate that campaign strategy into actualization. How do you put money in people's pockets? How do farmers of sugarcane in the sugarcane belt in Western, how do maize farmers in Kitale and the Trans Nzoia area, how do farmers of Ukwaju at the coastal region, how do they translate their labors into money? Because that has been the concern, that like farmers in the maize farmers in the Rift were very clear that, you know, we farm maize, but the government does not buy from us. They buy from other countries and come and dump maize in our country, and we don't benefit at all. That has to be dealt with. The question of sugar, that sugar industries and sugar companies in this country have collapsed, and therefore growing sugarcane does not translate to farmers getting money because the sugar industry has collapsed. Why? The reason is that sugar is bought and dumped in this country at cheaper prices, so we are not able to do that. So that's number one, to revive the key sectors of the economy. Looking at it, that we have a very huge debt, external debt as a country, that, you know, going up to, is it 10 trillion now?
8.2 trillion. 8.2
trillion. But there was something in Parliament to increase it to 10. I think that has to be stopped and this debt repaid, and not to invest in projects that do not translate to benefit to citizens. And I say this, and I have been all through a huge critic of the SGR. And you say that the SGR, we pumped a lot of money there, a lot of work went into it. And the same thing with the I-Rise Road. A lot of money went into it. But does that money come back? Does it translate to money in people's pockets? The huge infrastructure projects, yes, very good. But how do they bring about the trickle-down effect to citizens? And maybe just to say this on the record, that we met as Angaza movement, we met with all the presidential candidate, one of the things that we asked Ruto was, are we going to have an open government?
Yeah.
Can you give us a SGR contract? We need to know what it is that we got ourselves into. So he has also that duty to ensure that there's openness in governance. We need to know what the government is doing, why it is doing what it's doing, and what are our debts, and where is the money going to? What has it been used to do?
Yeah.
I think that's important that we get that openness. And the other thing that he has to do, and which will help us as a country, is that I think from 2013 until now, we have not had a parliament. Why? The parliament in 2013-2017, they had a majority. In 2017-2018, there was the handshake. And therefore, parliament sort of collapsed into an annexure of the executive. So nobody was talking on behalf of citizens in parliament. Why? Because the executive sort of swallowed parliament. That particular arm was not there. And now, maybe we can just ask him, you see now, because he's getting also very many other people to support him, if you create that kind of
monopoly,
so to speak, so that then the singularity of voice becomes when the president says parliament agrees and then we go on, we will kill this country. Okay. So we have to get checks and balances, and Ruto as a president needs to ensure that he creates an opportunity for institutions to function. The defunding of constitutional commissions, basically the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, National Gender
Equality Commission. Yes, Equality Commission.
The IPOA, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, all those constitutional commissions need to be funded to do their work. Recently, I think it was last month, for the 12th year since it was established, the judiciary fund has been operationalized. Why wait for 12 years to operationalize a fund like that? Why does the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights have funds to enhance human rights discourses in the country? So the government sort of like killed these independent institutions to ensure that they have a free hand to do everything. That has to end. We have to get space for every Kenyan, for every service that we require as Kenya to be delivered. The question of education. Very many people are still fighting over CBC. We don't know what it is. Is it being experimented here when it has not worked in other places? What does that mean even for Kenyans? Why are we introducing the colonial prototype education? CBC is the kind of education that the British colonizers wanted for African children in the 1930s. With little or other modifications. But that discussion is not even there, because when you talk about CBC, people are like, hey, what are you saying? You are not even allowed the space to discuss it, because it's a government project to make him be nayo kama serikali. You see? So we have to decolonize that education system.
And Makori, Kawive is raising an interesting point, ensuring that the key sectors work, the functionality of the key sectors. But will this rise and fall based on the people he selects to lead certain institutions, especially his cabinet, the 22 of them? Because you wouldn't expect the president to do everything. I mean, he will delegate most of it. But is it going to rise and fall with the cadre of leaders that he then picks as his cabinet?
I'm going to give an answer contextually like this. History has proven, Trevor, that no nation has risen above its leaders. It's a question of leadership, as simple as that. You see, this is nuts and bolts now of governance, okay? Why was Kibaki successful? The money began by him himself, so actually has to begin the president himself. And he has to determine, he has to understand, first of all, choose where the country needs to go and how it needs to get there. So on the broad sense, even before you go to the people, you need to have your own philosophy, your vision, okay? So let me break it down a little bit. What fiscal policy are you going to choose? What's the monetary policy you're going to choose? Are you going to be a Keynesian? Are you going to be a monetarist? Because these things now determine who you place at the helm of key institutions. Because we've seen fiscal policies that have not worked. Why we're in a mess economically right now? Because first of all, the fiscal policy was never clear. It was a patchwork of so many things. Today we do this, today, actually almost contradicting one another. In fiscal policy, you cannot overtax yourself to prosperity, Trevor. I mean, this is one of the most actually taxed country in Africa. Okay, we can't tax ourselves. Prosperity has never worked in history. It can't work. Okay, so the president first of all has to choose, just like the former president Kibaki, where do I want the country to go? What policy am I going to embrace now? And then choose key people who embrace your ideology, because Trevor, two cannot work together unless they agree. Okay, so you have a philosophy, then you choose a team now that embraces your philosophy and your thought process and your vision. This is the vision I want to go to. Then, are you the right person? What is your vision? Do you agree with my vision? Then can you execute and implement? Because the challenges we have in our country is that we have all these cool things and cool ideas and awesome policy, but zero implementation. Are you an executor? Are you an implementer? Because that's the people that we will have to have. Because we have challenges, real challenges. I mean, my friend was asking, how do you put money in the pocket? That's a monetary issue. That's a fiscal issue. Okay, policy. We have to reduce taxes. For example, now the argument is if you reduce taxes, then government revenue goes down. Not necessarily. If you reduce taxes, there's more money in people's pockets to spend to grow the economy. Then you get more revenue. You understand? Now, at one point, something has to give. But then you choose the right people of one, who have the vision. And second, also, I think, is the people who have fidelity to law and personal integrity. Because what we've seen in the past is, as has been alluded here, just the impunity that we have seen, whereby institutions are gutted, people do whatever want to do because at that point they're the ones in power. They forget that we have a country to run. I truly believe and hope, as the name suggests, of the government we have is the Kenya Kwanza, actually they will put the country first. Because if you put country first, rather than the individual, because as a cabinet member, I want to do what benefits me or my region, not the country first. Now, if you put the country first, you look at the country as a whole, the macroeconomic reality of our country, the variables that we face as a country. What can I do for my country? Not for me as an individual or my people or where I come from or the region I come from. It's a country first. Yeah. Once it chooses that, I can tell you, Trevor, we have an opportunity. Kenya has the greatest potential. I think in Africa, if you ask me, we have the right manpower. Our richness in the country is not in the ground. It's right here. It's right here. It's the heart that we have, the people that we have. And we have a tremendous opportunity. Yeah. We've just not gotten the people who can tap that and exploit it to the good of our country.
Yeah. But Diana, isn't that where the rubber meets the road? Because even when you look at the Daily Nation front page, there's a scramble for the hustler cake. We see some of the leaders, some of them started and with experience, others lost elections there. But there's the issue of the political debt. Yeah, in as much as there are appointments that are going to be made by the president-elect, there's the political debt, which is a reality that he has to also deal with.
Yes.
Those who stood with him when everybody else did not believe
Did not. The president-elect comes into power after major transitions at the county. People who are telling him, look, I think I have led a county. I can lead a ministry. I also got you votes, okay? And it is actually that particular balance of political inclusion, balancing and meritocracy, okay? And that was supposed to be the shift in the 2013 election. Our cabinet was supposed to be run by experts. Treasury should be run by an expert in fiscal matters, in the economy, and so on. Held a governance specialist on public health, community health, primary health, everything. But they shifted very soon. I think we only had, was it 2013 cabinet, that one for...
Yeah, it didn't last.
It didn't last. Okay? Clearly, they were like, no, here we made a mistake. And come 2017, even the cabinet positions of cabinet secretary and principal secretary were not enough. We had to craft the CAS positions so that we try and, you know, and that was declared illegal. We are not sure whether we are seeing a comeback of that. So it is definitely a huge problem, but it is not to say that our political class cannot lead. Our political class can surely lead ministries as well. But until the vetting process by Parliament, in the last cabinet, we had a number of CSs who are not vetted according to the Constitution. They were told, we are extending your mandate, you are with us 2013. Mm-hmm. And because of the kicks that they had either received or made on behalf of the presidency then, they had to be cushioned by all means against the Constitution, which is problematic. So unless, even in going for cakes, breadcrumbs from the president, I am hoping what Kenya Kwanza has promised through and through, adherence to the rule of law, due process, will take precedence over the debts, the political debts and promises that have been made. And I think all this is to think how we look at leadership, governance versus political consolidation. The scrambling for seats or the entitlement, the claims are around political consolidation as opposed to good governance of this nation. I worry very much that as we go into this process, and I think Kawive alluded to it, wanting to have a majority, a super majority in the National Assembly, again, will kill the process of making these particular appointments. It is, yes, the president who will make the appointment, but if we have a strong National Assembly and Senate, they will go back and be guided by the Constitution, and we will have a cabinet that is able, competent, in the current circumstances to deal with the realities that Kenyans are facing of high cost of living, of wanton corruption, of poor access to health, water, and so on. So if the institutions truly work, and I'm encouraged that the Public Service Commission has already sent out an advert. So I am hoping all these people who have ideas, Kawive, I hope you have put in your application to lead
as a PS.
as a PS to lead infrastructure, so that moving forward we have a different type of structure for SGR. Yeah. Maybe you wanted us to have roads where markets drive on that entire highway. Exactly. That would be very good. Put in your applications, as many Kenyans. Then from there, if they can have another screen where we see the credential, the tallying of competences, that would be amazing. It would build the confidence. Yeah. Then we give them charters. They took charters from us when they were being elected. We give them charters and the right to recall, impeachment of cabinet secretary be activated during this period. We don't want failures holding office for long. Let them not enjoy our tax. Yeah. We are very thinly stretched. We are very broke.
Yeah, but Kawive, you know, the reality is the president-elect has to walk that tightrope between meritocracy and political rewards. He even said it himself that the season for political deceit and political conmanship is over. Diana is talking about a Gazette notice where PSs, there's a call for PSs to apply. But would you apply as an ordinary person? Isn't it the perception that this is already a reserve for the political class that you don't even need to apply?
I think Diana was taking a swipe at me, telling me, knowing very well that I can't get because I did not support.
But that's the thing. Why do you think you can't? Because there's an outright advert there.
Because the consideration for who becomes a PS, for who joins what government, we are not in the history of this country, except maybe in 2001, actually, when Moi then, the year 2000, Moi created what was called the dream team for revival of the economy. I think going forward from then until now, we have seen very little professionalism in the choices for cabinet. If you remove certain instances, like for instance, where Karua was the Minister for Justice, you know, because that is a field, then you know, there's it when and a few other professions. But actually, the greatest consideration are political considerations. And this is why, as a country and as the president-elect being sworn in, should move us from rewarding politicians to engaging or employing professionals. I'm not saying politicians are not professionals. Where they are professionals, let them do that. Where they have the capability to lead, let them be chosen to do that. But in this country, what we need is an orientation, a new orientation in leadership and in service delivery. Why, for instance, can we say the universal health care system has never worked? What is the problem? Is it because it's being run by politicians? Is it because people do not understand what it is? But there are enough competent people who understand healthcare and who can be able to operationalize it without it being very, very expensive, without turning, what is that house where health ministry is housed? What is it called?
Afia
House. Without turning Afia House into Mafia House. You know, it is possible.
Yeah.
To get to root out the people who are not effective. And I think the other thing that we need the president-elect to do as he goes into office is to make a decision on how to fight corruption. He has said that, you know, he will not fight corruption the way it has been done, because he will ensure that institutions are able to function so that so that corruption is not weaponized. That's the word that he used. Yeah. It's not weaponized. But are our institutions ready? Is NCIC ready? Is ESCC? You know, towards the elections, we saw the ESCC gave a list of 241 names of persons who are not eligible, according to the rules of integrity, to be in the ballot. But IBC rejected them, and most of these people have been elected.
Most of them were elected.
You know, so it's a gravy train, and we don't know. So institutions are not working. So yes, to invest in getting them to work, invest in protecting them and protecting the institutions from interference by the political class. Otherwise, we'll amount to nothing.
Yeah, and Makori, you're the one who brought up the institutions. In fact, for you, you were quite optimistic that institutions do work when we were talking about the list.
I've worked, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, okay, let's talk about the IBC, for example.
Yeah. All
right, and I know those who live in glass houses don't throw stones. The 4 commissioners now say they're okay with what Wafula Chebukati said, plus what the Supreme Court decision was. This is after publicly having said that they do disassociate themselves with the results because of the opaque nature of that particular function. As an NCIC commissioner, if you did not believe in what NCIC was doing, and you came out publicly and said you don't believe in it, would you still stay or would you resign?
In Kenya or?
People in Kenya don't like it. Yes, in Kenya.
If it's me personally, I would. I think my conditioning comes from a different worldview. I spend a lot of time not in this place, so I'm conditioned to stand on principle. If I disagree, I'll walk away. But that's the reality we face. And as a disclaimer, I know all of them personally, and they're good folks, all of them. And I personally, that you mentioned them, I think I know that they can go back and agree and mend and because the reality is, prior to that, let me tell you prior to that so I can answer your question on this. Prior to that, see, I'm going to contextualize it. See, prior to that, but having spent a lot of time with them, especially even before and after, people I know, people I respect on both factions, if you want to call them that way, they've done a pretty good job. And my good friend Okili here had started talking about the rating of institutions. The police, National Police Service right now is 80%. For IBC, right up to election was actually close to 70%, because they really done a fantastic job in building the confidence of people and institutions. Now, of course, we all know what happened. It's public knowledge, we know what happened. The motive, you can never impugn motive. You don't know why somebody does something. We can speculate, you can judge, and it's very easy to judge people on that matter. But I am glad, let me say put it this way, I am glad that they have come around and have agreed with the, I think, Supreme Court decision, which has been very clear, I think very lucid in what they have decided. And The chairman was also categorical and said, listen, nobody has been, the chairman said very categorical the other day with his press conference, nobody has been told to go. I mean, they're ready to prove forward. They still have a Herculean task of not only just restoring public trust in the institution, which has been fractured to an extent. I think more importantly, there's still work to do even right now. People think IBC's work is just election, and then next we'll hear about them in 2027. But there's tremendous work to do right now, even in the country. I think for me, I know there will be a debate whether they should go. I think to me that's their personal choice. I mean, for me, they'll let them decide on an issue of principle. Hey, am I staying here or should I go? That's a personal choice. But the ABC is about to transition. I think we forget that the chairman and Commissioner and the Prof. Agulier, the time is about to end in the next couple of months. So we will have new set of commissioners. What is the reality of them vis-a-vis those who are current and who remain? Mine, I think, for them as an institution is they were entrusted by Constitution and the people of Kenya to deliver for us a credible, free and fair election. The court has ruled that way. Trevor, you know what? We focus on the court, but can I remind Kenyans and you that we had 120,000 observers and monitors. We had 87 international missions observing. I met practically most of them. Their preliminary report was, this is the most transparent, fairest election that they've ever seen. You understand? So to underscore, I think, the good work which they had really done, which even the court said, you guys have done a fantastic job till the last minute. So the international community said this is absolutely transparent. Now, of course, there are challenges. We know there were challenges. But given the country we've gone to and the people who had first-hand account of what happened, it was fair, it was free, it was transparent, it was credible. So for me, they have done a good job. Should we let one really clear issue besmirch somebody's career? We all make mistakes. And it's good. When you make a mistake, we're all imperfect. I'm not a perfect being. I've made mistakes. We'll make mistakes. You apologize, we move on. And if you think your conscience is aggrieved, well, you can always, I know this doesn't happen in our country much, but you can always move on to another place. You can always resign. But I think people make mistakes and people should be given a chance to move forward.
Yeah. Diana, is this where we lose it, accountability?
Yes. The simplest answer is yes. Because one, it is good for the 4 commissioners to respect the decision of the Supreme Court, okay? But now to walk back and say, it's good. It's a serious question of integrity and what you believe in. Every day I celebrate Nancy Barasa, okay? Because people say she was hounded out of office, but in her own words, she says, I was no longer dignifying the office of the Deputy Chief Justice. Every time people who hold public office, constitutional office, state officers, are they dignifying that particular office? It would be definitely beautiful for the 7 commissioners of the IEBC to show us corporate governance and how they walk back on the conflict. But just swallowing their words, when they occupied media spaces, national spaces for that period, there is one petition that holds that the chair, in announcing the results and the tallying alone, also went against the rule of law. But Bakori started by asking, is it in Kenya? There's a Kenya, and there's a Kenya with a constitution. We are yet to come into the space of Kenya with a constitution. How many CSs, cabinet secretaries, are still waiting for their salaries? Yet every day, for the last 6 months, all they did was use public resources to campaign for one side or the other. Yet, they will be here appealing, I think I have done well, I should be considered. You get, we have really mutilated the honor and dignity of being a public officer in this particular country. And if you recall, I was raised in the village, and there was a place for a teacher. okay? Those are placed for a teacher. Even in church, mwalimu would come and they would teach us how to read, whether it's the Bible or whatever. A place for a doctor. Trevor, there is dignity and pride you take from being a journalist. There is dignity I must take from being an advocate. I must carry it everywhere I go. There are things I cannot come and say, iyo sheria ilipitishwa na sijui. Surely the Law Society will ask, you have forgotten how to read the law.
Yeah.
The role of commissioners, independent institutions, must be seen to be so independent, and if anything blots that particular perception, the honorable thing to do at personal level is to elevate the dignity of that office.
Okay.
By stepping aside. I'm hoping that they can do that. And because NCIC is here, when that was happening, I just thought to myself, these commissions, do they speak to each other? Because there was a lack of cohesion in IEBC. NCIC would have been very well placed to come and quickly mediate before this escalates. They are a commission on administration of justice. Very, very quietly. We don't have to keep looking for eminent people out there. We must see the strength of our institutions in that particular lens.
Yeah.
And that way, they would have resolved it quietly in the boardroom and come back with strong, independent...
I'll come to you, but let me hear what Makori has to say, because this is true.
No, I wanted to... I hate the fact that she's put me on the spotlight. But to answer the question, because a lot of things we do quietly, but to answer that question, because it's been put here, yes. There were efforts we made, and actually I was also involved in that effort, in that mediation, and we still are. Because mediation doesn't have to be where there's real war in Kapedo or in Isiolo, but also our mandate transcends where there is an issue like that of national importance, where I think peace can be threatened. So there are efforts we did actually, to be frank with you, we did behind the scenes, tried to, and I've talked to both parties actually, and that's why I said I know for a fact we can find a way forward. And one of the reasons you've seen the posture now that is more amicable is because efforts have been made behind the scenes, not just also by NCAC, but also the Inter-Religious Council. I think we work in tandem together with them to make sure. So both NCAC and ICRC and Amen people came together behind the scenes really to bring some sort of mediation. And I think there will be. There will be a common front going forward. I can almost say, not guarantee that, but I know there will be a common front because of the efforts that we made behind the scenes. Okay. I shouldn't say that here in public, but since it has been asked, yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes.
Kawive, you know, Dr. Peter Mbaye here.
No, I'm really amazed that Makori, my good friend, is going behind the scenes to break the law. I mean, because the law is very clear. Chapter 6 is very clear.
How?
And that's what
she asked for mediation.
Let him finish.
Before.
Listen.
Yeah.
Chapter 6 is very clear. When you can no longer have dignity, you can no longer bring dignity to the office that you serve, it is very clear, step aside. And that is the problem that we have in this country. And that is what we need to resolve. Because if today, for instance, let's take, for example, you are discovered to be a violent person, you beat your wife, and it leaks to the public. Why would you be in NCIC? Why would you draw public salaries? Because this is your private life, but you are a wife beater. Why would you be in office? What is the moral compass of this country? And that's what we have to deal with. That, you know, when you cannot have dignity in the work that you do, or, you know, project that dignity to the country, the public should not be paying you. And that has to start somewhere. It has to start, and it has. I think it's one of the tasks that the president-elect now will have to maybe start us on, because from the beginning until now, it's everybody who is, as long as you are loyal, as long as you are singing the I Pledge My Loyalty song, you are free to go. But we have to start with people who abuse public office, people who steal public money, people who do or carry out acts that are contrary to the Constitution, people who do not have the capacity to do what is right, I think we have to start applying the law. Because the law is there, the provision is there. Chapter 6 is not a decoration to the Constitution. It is something, it is a chapter that as Kenyans we fought for a very long time. Actually, that chapter was removed very many times. If you ask the people who were in the constitutional discussions, it was removed very many times. It was finally, what was left in that chapter is the bare minimum. So we need to expand it, and we need to have a culture where Makod will not say, not in Kenya. No, the Kenya that we want, the Kenya Kwanza thing that we want is where people who are not fit to hold public office do not hold public office. Yeah.
But there's also in the Constitution, there's security of tenure that applies. You guys can't hound a commissioner out of office unless they voluntarily
it is not legalities.
No.
You know, when we go the legal way, and that's the problem. You have a corruption case, you go to court to have a stay of execution, and you continue being in public office, and that corruption case goes, and it doesn't ever work. You see, that's the problem. And that's why we are talking about the moral compass. It is not about legality. It is about integrity. It is about what is morally right.
Yeah. Okay.
But you see, the thing, and I agree with him, actually. I really agree. I mean, because for me, I believe on the higher standard, even above a constitution, where it's your own conscious, you as the self-defense principle you stand for. But Trevor, in our country, the few people who have resigned in the history of our country, usually actually are laughed upon. They're not even, in other places, it is an honor. You know, in our country, we laugh at people who resign. We don't really applaud them as good civil servants, especially those who resign on principle. For example,
that is true.
A good example as now the Right Honourable Martha Karua, when she resigned, it became later a political fodder and bludgeon to use against her that you walked away. You understand? We saw the candidate for governorship in Nairobi, when he actually was used against him. Actually, one of the reasons he lost is because, like, yo, you quit, you resigned, you walked away, you have no business again running. You understand? So it is used against you, and it is true. I agree. Absolutely, it is right. But where we are as a country, and that's why I say which country, because as a nation, we don't espouse these virtues and principles that, you know, these people, you can resign out of conscience because your conscience doesn't agree to. So now that's why we'll go Trevor's way, which says, well, the law gives you tenure and you can stay there and continue staying there. But it's not so much now even the government itself. I think as a people, what I'm saying this is as a people, as Kenyans, we need to look at ourselves, the psyche of our nation. Where are we in terms of morality?
Yeah.
Because if you look at that, then we will actually, it will not be something you look down to be resigned. Actually, you applauded, like, you know what, you stood for principle because you couldn't get along or something was wrong, or even you was your own failure. So, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I am resigning officially.
But Diana, what we're talking about in terms of the resignation, it should also come with some level of action, so that if I leave a position, there's some level of dissecting under the reasons why I left, and those reasons should be fixed. It's not just about you leaving based on your morality and then everything goes south, and the same person who comes after you meets the same issues that you went through that made you resign. Shouldn't there be a follow-through of some sorts? Because that resignation itself is a protest. It's the most public protest that something is not right here,
yes,
and it needs to be fixed.
Yes. Definitely. One, Chapter 6 is ethical leadership. Ethical leadership. When you're feeling conflicted in any way about the office you hold, ethical leadership should be you do not waste Kenyan resources on long inquiries, impeachment processes. You step aside and retain the dignity. But when you're also conflicted because the institution you're working in has malfunctioned, has had certain malpractices and violations of the Constitution, there must be a due process. Part of what we are seeing recurring could have been addressed if what the former commissioner, Rosalind Akombe, raised in detail, resigned, sought asylum, were taken up during the 5-year period of preparing for election, updating the register.
Yeah.
But that was set aside, okay? Now, the question is, do the institutions we have, particularly Independent Commission, have the structures and the strength and the will to do concrete, solid reflections and implement? IEBC had such a good opportunity because after the last election, 4 commissioners, some resigned. Did they all resign? I think so. All of them resigned with reasons. A point of reflection. By the time the other 4 came in, what changed? There were major opportunities in the top leadership. The directors, the CEO, and the deputy CEO. A very good point of reflection. There was the KPMG audit.
Yeah.
All that was not laid out. But sometimes I worry that we are too subscriptional. We subscribe everything. These are things that if we understood why we have leadership and integrity, all institutions, the minute a commissioner resigns in NCIC and raises fundamental question, the business of that commission must be first to ensure they resolve that internally and regain the honor, the dignity, and the confidence of that office. I don't think it needs to be written to that level of detail.
Okay.
It is most importantly the will to do the right thing and to adhere to Chapter 6, which is lacking.
Right.
And it comes, I think, from the appointment process.
Okay.
Because just like as we are going into the process of appointing principal secretaries and cabinet secretary, the lobbying that is required for people to hold independent offices is highly political lobbying. Okay? So we are all about political loyalty and political subscription, as opposed to subscribing to the rule of law and ethical leadership.
All right, let's bring up some feedback really quick and see what you're saying as we also take closing remarks on this for the in-tray of the president-elect and what he needs to focus on. Let's see what you're saying here. Ingela Nazaro says Kenyans are now in the process of giving president full mandate to implement his campaign pledges. He shouldn't come up with any lame excuses and unnecessary blame games. He's been DP and part and parcel of the previous regime, okay? John Muyundo says, Kenya is a funny country. They will celebrate a person who burnt people in a church and rebuke a Diane who fought for their freedom, okay? Bobo Tieno Wino, NCIC is a toothless institution. I've never seen any convicted person from their farm or any mediation they have done successfully. I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Let's hold that thought and let's hear what Makori has to say first before we come to the rest.
That's incredulous.
Yeah.
Maybe they need to go to North Rift, Nandi Kakamega, Nandi Kisumu, Isiolo. I mean, we've done so much work in the ground, I can't even list. And our work is not to actually convict, that's the work. Separation of powers is an acquisition. We investigate, we give the case to the DPP, they take it to court, that's up on them. So that's our work. So first of all, and our work is not to bite. You know, we bring cohesion and peace. So why would we have tooth to begin with? Ours is a dove. We bring people together, not bite and forth. That's not our job. That's one of the things that we ought to do. Yes, I'm just responding to that. That's not true at all.
All right, let's bring up the other feedback and see what you're saying. There's one that was Ngashe. Says those 4 commissioners should come out and tell Kenyans why they should continue to serve as IEBC commissioners with regard to their conflicting statements. Okay. See what you're saying on 22422, that's an SMS line. You can tell us your name and where you're texting from, as we read some of them here and then take closing remarks here. You don't tell us your name or where you're texting from, but you say the dignity of independent institutions is questionable. Your brother complained while in office and you brushed it off as if it didn't count. Corruption is rampant. How will you deal with this elephant in your own house? Okay. Says the only way to unite Kenyans is a change of law on presidency. All right. Okay, so as we close on this, Kawiva, I'll start with you. The in-tray for the president-elect, what is your word of advice to him? Where should his priorities lie? What should he focus on going forward?
I think he should very quickly demonstrate that he's a president of one Kenya. The whole country is the president of the whole country, number one. And number two, I think as a president, you need to invest in Kenya developing a culture of Utu, both integrity and also feeling the responsibility or the weight that Kenyans carry. Become Utu, because Utu is the only thing that is going to save this country. That conversation has to change. We have to create a culture where all of us are responsive, are responsible, and we care for the other. For him as a president, he has also to demonstrate that the interests of Kenyans and the problems of Kenyans matter to him. The price of unga, the price of fuel, the price of essential commodities, the price of medicine, these are things that he needs to, in the first 100 days, ensure that they stabilize or they get low. What it is that needs to be done for people to get unga at a cheap price needs to be done. And that can be done by the president who thinks about Kenyans as human beings first, not as customers that, have to pay taxes. No, but as human beings. The dignity of every Kenyan must be upheld.
Okay.
Yeah.
Diana?
For the president-elect, I think his entry must focus on the cost of living, because it is definitely at the center of particularly economic and social rights, right to health, right to food, right to education. That must be the first priority of improving livelihoods in this country. I am so far impressed by what he has been stating, that he will try as much as possible to improve local production in agriculture, in other industry, because the debt burden we have, the tax burden that we have, we must surely improve. Our economy, the amount of money in circulation, we must stop being a net importer and become a net exporter if we are to improve on that. So I am looking forward to very, very firm commitments on that. Just like other Kenyans, unga, mafuta, all those things, within 100 days, a plan to address that in the immediate term, and a plan on how to address the rest. Then the second area is something that he has committed to, the strengthening of institution. I would like to see an environment where, as he's sworn in, makes his appointment, we are able to see very, very independent and objective opinions by independent commissions. For instance, he has promised to deliver 50-50 cabinet, gender parity, not 2/3, okay? Kenya is higher than that. That is why we have demands of IEBC. Even as other developed democracy praise us, we have higher aspirations. So he's leading us on that, but I would love to see NGEK, the Kenya National Commission, give him an advisory when he, give him, not an advisory, it should actually be a critique of the appointments that he makes and how much they adhere to the Constitution. This definitely shouldn't even take, it should be in the first 30 days, the list that he submits, that he's committed to gender equality for what it is in this country. The percentage of men and women is 50-50, 51-49. So 50-50 is good enough, and we hope to see that. Then the second area, there was a strong economic or class narrative. But the class narrative is also one where we have seen most of the youth, particularly living in informal areas, subjected to extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. Within 100 days, I would want to see that nobody will have to be felled by a bullet unless they were also holding a gun against a police officer, that the judicial process will work from the point of investigation, arrest, prosecution. No police officer will feel frustrated that I know this person is a criminal and they are not facing justice. Guarantees for that particular environment would be amazing. Finally, that immediately within 100 days, counties have money. All government institutions have their budget disbursed without any encroaching into people's functions under the Constitution. Let the Constitution work.
All right, Makori?
I think mine is two simple points I'm going to make. One is, has been already started here, but I'll amplify it more. In this sense, the presidency is a symbol of unity in our country. After a very fractured and highly polarized environment we've seen in the campaign, he has, of course, the legal and I think even the just moral obligation to bring our country together. He's the president of Kenya, has been said. And to go up, not in a passive way, but in a very active way, reach out to areas and places that don't vote for him, and leaders who lead for him, in the spirit of building our country together. Which goes to the second point. Building a country. You see, I would say this. The president should play the long game. The long game here is 100 years. I know we're talking about the 100 days. I'm not worried about 100 days. The 100 days narrative usually doesn't work because the governance is very difficult than politics up the stage. If the president thinks 100 years from now and plays the long game for Kenya, because now we've transitioned, what I'm saying is because now, Trevor, we've transitioned from, I believe we've broken the cycle of violence in election. I mean, we're so peaceful. I think so now we can build on this foundation. Let's build on this foundation. So let's think of progeny and then work our way back. He needs to work his way back in the sense that rule as if he has only one term to rule and do what is right for the country. Because sometimes that's political, because our cycle is 5 years, so as a politician you think, let me do X, Y, so I can be re-elected. No. He should think about 100 years from now, forget about re-election. What is right for our country, get the right leaders around him, the vision that is ought to be for 100 years, work his way back so that now you start building a very strong foundation and doing what is right for the country. As it is a Kenya Kwanza administration, let the country come first. 100 years from now, where should Kenya be? Work our way back. And on that issue, that can help. Let me use this equation, the PE equation, performance, expectation. I know there's a lot of expectation vis-a-vis performance, okay? When you perform above the expectation, it is almost automatic that you can come back to office. If you don't, of course, you won't. And how do you exceed expectation? By exactly doing what I'm saying. Think the long game, play the long game, build foundation, be patient. Let's build a country together. If you do that and perform that, I can tell you, people forget the 100-day promise because they can see where he's taking our country to, and they'll be patient with him to build our country. So all in all, I mean, I wish good luck, and it's exciting for our country. Okay. It's exciting where we are. We have an opportunity. It's a new dawn for our country. We have an opportunity actually to chart a new territory and be where we've gone, where we've no other country thing in Africa has gone.
All right. Yeah. Diana, there's a question here from Dr. Peter Mbai, and this is for you because you're an advocate of the High Court. Is it normal for lawyers to call judges when they're supposed to be writing their ruling?
It would definitely be against procedure, Trevor. Unless the only thing I would clarify, not to call them when they're writing judgments, but let me speak for me and my years of practice. My classmates would be magistrates. Okay, in 2 years we'll be judges. Maybe we have dinner together. If I am checking on, are we having dinner? That's different. But if you're checking on the judgment, let us allow independence of the judiciary to be independence of the judiciary, and it is centered definitely around the institutional structure, but also the persona of the judge.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Diana Gishengo, Advocate of the High Court and Campaign Manager, Amnesty International Kenya, Danvers Makori, NCIC Commissioner, and Kawive Wambua, Deputy CEO, Inuka Trust. Thank you so much for making time this morning. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, Willis Bazuraburu is here with health and lifestyle. It's September, so October, November, December. People are supposed to go around the world, travel around the country. Zuru Kenya parks everywhere you go, have fun. They'll be speaking to Lemmy Olemutaiwa, the General Manager, View Travel. He'll tell you all the nice places you can visit as you plan your holidays. All right, campaign is done. Swearing in will be done by then. Have fun. Bye for now.